The next command which we are going to take a look is the git stash command, and this is a really handy command when a developer has some unfinished feature development and developer still wants to work on to those changes without committing those file into the GitHub branch. Let's take a look onto the git stash commands which we are going to perform into the demo. So first we are going to start with the obvious git stash command for both tracked and untracked file. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what is tracked and untracked file. Second, we are going to take a look onto how you can pop or apply those changes and what is the difference between the git stash pop and apply. After that, we are going to take a look onto some utility command, for example, git stash list, git stash view, which will help you to view what you have stashed using the git stash command. After that, we are going to take a look like how you can drop and clear your stash list inside your GitHub branch. Let's try to simplify the git stash concept with some realistic example. And here in this realistic example, I have taken a kitchen platform and a fridge. So kitchen platform is the place where you cook your food and fridge is the place where you store your food item. All right. So how we can relate this particular setup with our git stash. So just I'm giving you a hint that this fridge, assume this fridge as a stash where you can store your code. And in this realistic example, we are going to store our food. Okay, so how the git stash works. So let's consider a scenario that you're cooking a cake actually, or you're baking a cake and you have prepared a batter for your cake. But on that particular day, your wife comes and say, no, I don't want to eat cake. I want to eat pizza. But you already prepared a batter for your cake. So what you will do with that particular batter which you have prepared for baking the cake? So the idea is quite simple. So you are going to store that batter into the fridge. So maybe next day or after a couple of days, you can again fetch that particular batter back and then you can do the baking of that particular cake so that your batter is not going to get wasted. Okay, so now you have stored that particular batter into your fridge. So this fridge is acting as a stash for you right now. And this kitchen platform is acting as a GitHub repository where you want to work. Okay, but since you have stashed your changes, then what's the next thing you are going to do? So as your wife has requested that she wants to eat a pizza. So on the same kitchen platform, you are again going to prepare a dough for a pizza. So you had two items. One is like a batter for a cake and one is the dough for a pizza. But since you cannot you cannot bake your cake, so you have stored that particular batter inside your fridge and now you're focusing only onto the pizza dough. Okay, so this particular fridge is acting as a stash for you where you can temporarily store your code. And here in this example, you can store your batter for a cake inside your fridge for some time. And in the meantime, when you have stored that particular item into your stash or into your fridge, then in the meantime, you can keep on working on your kitchen platform because your kitchen platform is now empty. So here, this is the example where this kitchen platform, assume that that is your GitHub branch where you were working, but that change is unfinished. So you have stored into stash and then you started working on some other feature. And once you're done with that feature, then you can again pop that particular change which you have stashed into your stashed repo. Stash is not a repo, but it's just a fridge over here. So you can again pull that changes back and then again restart the working on the unfinished change which you are trying to do. Now we understand the example of our kitchen and the fridge. Let's take a realistic example where you or a developer who is working on a branch. The branch is test branch 1. And here on the right hand side, you can see I have created a stash. So stash is just a logical bucket where you want to store your changes. Okay, so right now I'm into test branch 1 and here there are a few changes. So first of all, I would like to see, I want to stash my change 1 inside this particular stash, which you can see. So for that, I need to go into my GitHub branch where I'm working, and that's where I want to run the first command, which is git stash command. So let's jump to my GitHub console and see how we can run the git stash command. Here is my terminal, and the first command which I would like to run is the git status. And first of all, let's see if your file is tracked or untracked. So let's run the command git status. And here you can see the file is in the red color, which means this file is untracked. So Git is not aware about this particular file, that you are working on this particular file. So if the file is untracked, then the command which you can run for stashing is, I'm going to clear the screen. So I'm going to run the command git stash and with the flag u. So that will take all of your untracked files. So right now it is only one file, but you can have a more than one file inside your GitHub repository. And that is with this particular command, it is going to stash all of those files. But here we are having only one file, then it is going to stash that particular file. So that hit enter. And here you can see that our first file has been stashed. And this is the it's a hash which is generated, and that hash belongs to the stash which we have just done for our first file. Now after running our first git stash command, so now our first file has been stashed, which is our change1.txt. And as soon as that first file is stashed, then you will see that you will receive this particular message inside your git stash. I'll show you how you can see it. So if you go back to your terminal here, then here you can run the command git stash list. And here you can see this is your first stash, which is starting with the 0. So that's the identifier, how many stash you have done it. So you have done only one stash, and that starts with the 0. And this is the hash for that particular stash which you have done. So the more stash you do, this particular number which you can see over here, this number will keep on increasing. I'll show you. So let's get back to our presentation, and here you can see now we are going to create one more file, which is a change2.txt, and then we are going to stash that one also over here. So along with that, then it is going to create one more stash at the red one, and here it is going to be associated with the change2.txt. All right. So let's get back to our terminal. I'll clear the screen and let's create a file. First of all, let's assume that developer is trying to create one more change, which is the unfinished change, but he wants to stash that particular change also again into our stash. So here, let's create a file what's the file name over here? Change2. So let's create change2.txt. And now check the command like git status. And here you can see it is an untracked file, so I can stash it. So here the command which I'm going to run is git stash and then u for untracked file, and then hit enter. And here you can see it has been stashed. So right now this is the hash which has been given for this particular stash command. Now let's take a look onto the git stash and list command and see. So here you can see the 0 and then after that 1. So we have done two stash for the change1.txt and change2.txt. So if you take a look onto our slide, then this change.txt2 is also now present inside our stash. And then, sorry, I should rename this one to 1, and let me show you back. So right now you can see that this particular stash identifier has been assigned to this particular change2.txt as well. So the idea is like the more you stash, the more this stash identifier will be keep on adding onto your stash commit or stash command which you are executing inside your GitHub branch. Now, since you have stashed your changes inside your stash bucket, which you can see, now how you will pop those changes back, and for that we are going to run the command git stash pop. So the pop works on a concept of a last in first out. So the last stash we have done it for a change2.txt. So that was the last entry inside our stash. So as soon as you run the command git stash pop, then it is going to pop the last stash which we have done it, and that is our change2.txt. All right, so let's take a look how we can run this particular command. So go back, and here I'm going to clear the screen, and the command which I'm going to run is git stash, and then let me show you the first git status. So here you can see before running the git pop command, let's check the status of our git repository. So here you can see there is no file which is untracked over here. So there is nothing like a change1.txt or change2.txt. Now let's run the command git stash and then pop and then hit enter. And here you can see the change2.txt has been pulled back, which means this was the last change which we have stashed. So that will be the first change which will pull back. Okay, so now you can see our this particular change has been pulled from our stash. All right, and let's take a look onto our git stash status. So I'll clear the screen and then run the command git stash list, and here you can see there's only one identifier, which is stash 0, which is left inside my stash. So which is quite evident that yeah, this is the only thing which is left inside my stash, and rest of the thing which I have already popped up, which is change2.txt. So how should I pop up this change1.txt also? So again, you can run the same command over here. So here I'm going to run the command git stash pop and then hit enter. And here you can see both change1 and test1. Sorry, I should have named it change1.txt, but anyway, the concept is 1 and 2.txt. So now we can see that our first file is also pulled back from our stash. And if you take a look onto the stash, then this stash will be empty. So here you can run the command git stash list and see the stash list is completely empty. So all the thing which we have stashed, we have popped it back from our stash. So far we have seen the git stash untracked file, we have seen the git pop command, and we also seen the git stash list command. All right, now I'm going to show you the simple git stash command for a tracked file. All right, so how to do that? So I'll close this one over here and I'll go back to my terminal, and let's take a look onto the git status. So here you can see this file is untracked file, which means Git is not aware about this particular file. So how we can make it aware? So I'm going to run the command git add, and then I'm going to run change1.txt, and after that I'm going to run the command git status again, and then the color will change it to green. Now this is a tracked file, and now we need to stash this particular file. So for that, we are going to use the command as a git stash without a u flag. So here you can see this is the command which we are going to use, and we are not going to use this u over here. So that's the basic difference between the untracked and the tracked file. Let me show you how we can run this command. So here I'm going to type the command git stash and then hit enter. And here you can see it has been stashed. I can show you git stash list, and this file is available over here inside this stash. So I'll clear the screen and let's run the command git status. And here you can see there's nothing, no file is visible over here. And you can pull that file back by running the command git stash and then pop. And here you can see the file is back over here, and your git stash should be empty. And you can verify with the command git stash list. And here you can see the stash is completely empty over here. Now let's focus on to the git apply and see the difference between the pop and the apply. What is the difference between pop and apply? So here I'll take an example once again. So here I'll go and take a look onto git status. So here you can see the file is change1.txt, and that we need to stash it. So right now the current status is git stash list. So the stash list is completely empty. There is nothing in the stash right now. All right. So first of all, let's take a look onto the git stash apply. But to apply that one, first of all, we need to perform the git stash. We need to put that file back into the stash. So for that, I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to run the command git stash and hit enter. And let's check the status. So git stash list, and here you can see the file is inside my stash with the identifier 0, stash at the red 0. All right. And the status is empty completely. Here you can see there's no file present. Everything is stashed right now. Okay, so I have two choices. I can run the pop and I can run the apply. So we have already seen the pop. As soon as you run the pop, then it works on the last in first out. So whatever the last will be popped out of that particular stash, and stash will be empty. But in apply, whenever you run the git stash apply command, then in that case, that particular item or that particular stash will not become empty. It will be popped back, but that stash item will still be there. All right. So let's take a look how it works. So here I'm gonna go back, and here let's take a look onto the git stash list. So the item is present over there. Okay, and then I'm gonna pop that change back into my GitHub repository using the git stash apply. So here run the command git stash and then apply and then hit enter. And here you can see the change is pulled back from the stash, and this file is available over here. But at the same time, if I'm going to run the command git stash list, then you can still see the stash is still not empty. The changes, that particular stash is still there. So that's the basic difference between the pop and the apply. So let me revise once back. If you run the pop command, then it will pop everything back from your stash and your stash will become empty. But apply, it will pop the change back, but your stash will not become empty. So for that, either you need to run the commands git status stash drop or git stash clear. I'm going to show that one also. So right now, what we have done, let me erase these things. So right now we have run the git apply command, which means our stash is not empty. And what thing I can do over here is I can run the git stash drop to drop that particular stash and make my stash empty. Okay, so go back and then I'm gonna run the command git stash drop over here. And here you can see it has dropped that particular stash, so which is this one. Okay, and if I take a look, I'll clear the screen, then git stash list. And here you can see my stash list is completely empty. So that's how you can play around. Sorry, I'll go back. So here we have seen the pop, we have seen the apply, and then we have seen the drop as well. Okay, the next command which I'm going to show you is the stash list and stash show. Okay, so let's see what we need to cover. So I told you git stash list. So git stash list I have shown you already. So let's focus on the git stash show command into the terminal. I'll go back and let's check the status, how many files we have. So here we have a one file. So let's try to stash this particular file. So I'm going to run the command git stash over here. And here you can see that has been stashed, and I can verify that git stash list and that has been stashed. I'll make one more stash over here. So I'll introduce one more file, which is change 2.txt. Then I'll do the git add so that I can have it as a tracked file, and then I'm gonna do the git stash of this file as well. Let's take a look, git stash list, and here you can see the stash identifier 0 and stash identifier 1 for change 1 and change 2.txt. Okay, now the command which we are looking for is the git stash show, which is this one. So yes, we can see from the git stash list command, yeah, there are two stashes. We have this one and we have this one, but we don't know what is inside that particular stash. So which file we have inside that particular stash. So to do that, we are going to run the git stash show command. And to do that, what you need to do, you need to run git stash show. After that, you can just put the identifier, which is this one, and then hit enter. And here you can see it is showing this stash contains change 2.txt. All right. So this is how you can just run the git stash show command, and then it will show what the file are present inside your stash. Moving further, so till now we have seen the git stash untracked file, pop, apply, stash list, stash show. We have seen the drop also. Now let's take a look onto the stash clear, and bit mindful that once you run the git stash clear command, then it will wipe all of your stash. So let me show you. So here, let's get back to terminal and just check the status. So git stash list. So here you can see there are two stashes, 0 and 1. And as soon as I run the git stash clear command, and then I try to rerun the git stash list, then here you can see everything is gone. So just be mindful whenever you are running the git stash clear command, which is this one, then it is going to empty and remove all of your stashes, and there is no chance that you can recover it back. So be mindful whenever you're running this particular command. So that's all about the git stash. I hope this particular chapter will help you to command your git stash, and you will be able to git stash command in your day-to-day operations.